Okay, a motion by Steve.
Support.
Supported by Scott to approve the minutes of the meeting of February 5, 2020. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Next item is a standard provision of our meeting in terms of inviting general public comment on non-agenda items. This is an opportunity, if you've got something on your mind, to share it with the commission, and up to 5 minutes per person in this case. Is there anyone wish to speak to a non-agenda item this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll move along. Before we go into this case, I'll introduce the case. It's case number 20-855, a request to rezone request and a preliminary area site plan involving the Lincoln Lawns Country Club. Application has been withdrawn by the applicant, but I'd like to turn it over to Community Development Director Frank Wash to kind of give you a little background.
Well, good evening, everyone. I imagine most of you folks are here for Lincoln Lawns. That project, as Terry said, has been withdrawn by the developer. So what does that mean? That means the current version of the plan that they applied for is a dead project. Okay. So what we were asking the Planning Commission to do tonight is acknowledge receipt of the letter of withdrawal from the developer, and then make a motion to formally close the case. That's more of a paperwork thing, more for public records, so that this application, case 2855, will hopefully be closed tonight and become a dead project. Now that doesn't mean that we won't get additional projects in the future. AMF owns that property, but the reason this application failed was because the owner wouldn't sign the application, which I've never seen before in 20 plus years of doing planning. We would have assumed, we did assume, and you never assume, right, that the developer and the property owner are both on the same page. And in this case, that was not the case. So part of your staff's job is to vet out projects, for lack of a better term. In this case, this one did not vet out, and we called them on it and said, if you don't get the application signed by the owner, you don't have a project. And then we got their letter saying, the owner's not going to sign, we withdraw the application. So I apologize on behalf of the city for the confusion and all of the anxiety about this project, but this one's going to be closed. If someone comes in with a new application, then the full public notification process starts again. But for the time being, we're asking the Planning Commission to close this application.
Now, I believe the procedurally, it's a matter of opening a public hearing, taking public comment, and part of that public comment is the request by the applicant to withdraw the application. But at the same time, if there's anyone in the audience that wants to offer comments concerning this project, they may do so. But as Frank pointed out, we may see something else come in for application later, but this particular project is, as of this evening, will be accepted as being a closed project. That being said, I entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Make a motion to open public hearing.
Second. Okay, motion by Pat, supported by Joe to open the public hearing for this project. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. 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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Again, if there's anyone that wish to come forward, identify yourself in terms of your name and address, and offer any comments you may want to share with the commission at this point in time.
My name is Betty Kelly, and I live at 656 Fairway Drive. And I did not get a card on this meeting originally. I heard it from my neighbor who lives right behind me. I was a little upset that I wasn't informed. But anyway, I questioned, why are we getting so many apartments all clustered in one area? As you know, the traffic on Lake Michigan Drive is horrendous. I presence on Lake Michigan Drive anymore like there used to be. And people speed there quite a bit. And that's what I wanted to say because I am very concerned. I've lived in Walker all my life. And it's changed drastically because of the congestion that we're getting in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would wish to offer public comment?
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion by Pat, supported by Jason to close the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Mr. Chair, do you need me to enter into the record the withdrawal?
Yes, please.
Okay. Procedurally, I'd like to enter into the record the withdrawal for this plan.
And that was offered by,
Stonely Company, the applicant.
okay. That's accepted into the record. In terms of, I don't know if you want to offer any staff a comment on the question that was posed by the neighbor?
Frank or me,
Either one of you.
no application, so,
Okay.
I mean, we're well aware of all the concerns that are out there, but it's a struggle when there's vacant property to be developed, so.
Okay.
I think we can.
All right. At this point, entertain a motion at this point to consider closing this case, accepting the letter of withdrawal and closing this case.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Steve,
Support.
supported by Scott to accept the withdrawal and close this case. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next case on the agenda. This is case number 2853, rezoning request from the Kennel Hills Public Schools regarding the properties at 2040 Kinney and 3391 Richmond Court. It's a case where the properties in question are zoned, one of which is zoned light industrial, and the other single-family residential, and the request of the school district is to rezone it to AA agricultural. And with that, Frank, if you could introduce the project, please.
I will do so.
Thank you, Frank. Any questions of Frank at this point? Before we open the public hearing, if we could have the representatives from the school district come forward, please.
All right, perfect. Technology, interesting. I'm Gerald Hopkins, honored to be the superintendent here at Kennewick Hills, and I've been before you a few times. I see some familiar faces. Frank did a very nice job explaining our application. As was noted, the district has purchased recently 2 parcels, closed on both of them adjacent to what we refer to as the Early Childhood Center now. A lot of you still recognize it as Walker Station Elementary. It's an early childhood building. It services a population, mostly early childhood, that's before kindergarten age, but we also have a child care in there as well. 6 classrooms of child care in there, and they service before school child care, after school child care, and during the school day child care as well. So not just early childhood. If you think of before school and after school, we have students that go there, elementary age students, and then parents bring them in the morning as early as, I believe it's 6:30 a.m. I'm up, but just not there, and they're there until school starts, so we bus them over to their elementary school, and then after school we bus them back to the building and until parents pick them up. So it was both pieces of property were desirable for the district to have a larger footprint there. And you may recall that we went to our community in support of a bond proposal in 2015, and that was to build a new early childhood center at a location to be chosen if the community supported that proposal. That proposal failed, and part of the feedback that we received from the community was, you already have a building in Walker Station, utilize that building. And so that's been our focus since 2015, how we could take care of that building in a different manner to better meet our needs, which include expanding as that population or that need increases, specifically preschool education. So at this point, we're just asking, now that the district has purchased this property, that we have them rezoned to be consistent with the zoning that we have at Walker Station. Any questions?
Why do you need to be consistent? I mean, nothing's going to go on those properties, or why do you need it agricultural at this time?
Well, I think just to be, again, for those properties for them all to be the same. I don't know from a planning perspective whether or not it's that pertinent or not, but I believe the next step in the process, or a step in the process, is completing the paperwork to have those parcels all joined together as one parcel, and having them all zoned the same seemed to make, I don't know, maybe it doesn't make sense, but to us it made sense. Instead of having 3 different, them zoned 3 different ways.
Okay, any other comments, questions? There aren't any. This has been advertised as a public hearing, so I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Make motion?
Support.
Motion by Steve, supported by Jason to open the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Public hearing is open. Again, anyone in the audience that wish to offer comment on this rezoning request, please feel free to step forward, identify with your name and address, and share with us your concerns.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion by Pat, supported by Jason to close the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Discussion. Any concerns? Looks like it's consistent with the master plan that common zoning for all the properties does allow for, as they come forward with development on the property, they'll have consistency with zoning provisions, that light industrial zoning, especially on Kinney, would be out of character with the balance of the property, and especially if they're going to be combining them into one property. That common zoning is desirable.
Yeah, it seems this clears the way for future access to Kinney, which I think would be nice for the site.
This child care has become very popular with mom and dad both working, and he talks about the kids get dropped off at 6 and picked up later in the day by one or other parents. And this I was on the Granville School Board, and this was really, yes, this is what people want. They may not want to pay for it, but they certainly want it, and I think it really helps, and I certainly would be very in favor of what he's offered here.
Well, I don't have any objection to what they're doing there, but I'm reading the staff analysis, and we have a public, semi-public zoning for schools and such facilities. So if we're going to rezone the property, why don't we rezone it public, semi-public? To me, that's more consistent than agricultural. That if we're going to go through the effort, I would just soon see it the public, semi-public.
You make things a little more complicated.
Well, I would ask the school, why don't you go to the public, semi-public zoning rather than agricultural? I mean, agricultural, it's not agricultural.
And that's a very fair question. We were asked by the city of Walker 2012, I believe, thereabouts, 2000. That I believe is when the city entertained that new zoning, and we were asked at that point. So as a school district, we did seek legal counsel related to that, and it's our legal counsel that suggested, not only us, but I believe Granville at the same time. I don't know how they handled it, different district, not my responsibility, but through legal counsel, it was suggested that we maintain that. So, you know, we hire a legal counsel to protect the interests of the district. They had very good rationale for that being the case, and so that's why we made the decision to stay at AA, as it's zoned right now.
Is that correct, Frank?
That is correct. You recall, if you've been around a while, we built that PSP ordinance, and we did that just for the purpose of any publicly owned property. And once we put that code in place, we then reached out to all the public school districts, Kent County, MDOT, anyone who was a public agency, and said, we have a new zoning district. It would make your use fully permitted. And if you're interested in rezoning, let us know. The city will sponsor the rezoning, because the city is going to rezone all of city-owned parcels to PSP. So we reached out to everyone, and Jerry's right. The school district said, based on our legal counsel, we would prefer to not rezone to that district. So we said, okay, that's good. Kent County, for Millennium Park, all those properties, they said, yes, please rezone us to PSP. So if you look at your zoning map and you go down in Millennium Park, those lots have all been rezoned. There may be a couple of outliers that they picked up over the years that, are small parcels or what have you. But then if you look in your staff report, the city-owned lots on this campus are all zoned PSP as well. So it's one of those things where we developed the code, reached out to the public agencies, said, if you're interested, let us know. And certainly weren't going to force the rezoning on anyone, which we wouldn't do on pretty much anyone. So in this case, I think what Jerry's proposing here tonight, while it may not be the PSP code, it may not be 100% in alignment with that, the use of the PSP, what have you. At the end of the day, keep in mind that schools are one of those uses that are heavily preempted by state law. So when it comes down to zoning, we're pretty restricted on what a local community can apply zoning-wise as far as standards on public schools and charters. So that's why when I look at this, it's one of those uses along with farms and mines that there's a heavy amount of regulation from the state level that preempts local. So if I add all the pieces together, it comes out to be, is it consistent with the master plan? Yes. Is it the perfect zoning district? Probably not, and I think Jerry would admit that as well. But on the balance, it's consistent with the other zoning that's out there. And if they are talking about putting all these properties together, like Terry said, we would certainly rather have it be one zoning than having mixed-use zoning on one piece of property. That becomes really difficult to interpret. So that's as much, there's my rationale and explanation.
Is the school going to combine these properties into one parcel, or are you going to keep them separate?
Yeah, the plan is to combine them into one parcel. We did that with the, if you recall, the bus loop off from Nolan into Central Elementary. When the district purchased that parcel to create that bus loop, we did the same thing. We combined it into one. Yeah.
Good discussion. I believe we may be at a point of calling the question. We want to recommend what our recommendation will be to the city commission with regard to this rezoning.
Be happy to make a motion. For case 20-853, I'll make a motion to recommend approval to the Walker City Commission for the following requested rezonings. Rezone the lot at 2040 Kinney Avenue Northwest from ML Light Industrial to AA Agricultural, and rezone the lot at 3931 Richmond Court Northwest from SA Single Family Residential to AA Agricultural.
Okay, we got a motion on the floor offered by Steve, supported by Joe, to recommend to the city commission the rezonings as requested in the hearing notice. There being no other comments or questions, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Next project is case number 20-854. Final area site plan review, Consumers Credit Union at 330 Wilson Avenue Northwest. This is a public hearing. This is a final area site plan review for 2,140 square foot building with 2 drive-up windows and various site improvements for the Consumers Credit Union in the West Town Commercial Planned Unit Development. And Frank, if you could take the lead on introducing the project.
Okay, do we have the consumers team here? All right, so I'm not going to, developers will explain the project, I'll give you the framework again, just like we did last time. For those of you who have gone through the steps of planning and developments here, most of the work is done up front, unless there's an outlying project that comes in afterwards. So, you recall we went through many reviews of the West Town project, and you folks worked with engineering and the developers of that project to establish all of the infrastructure, get that in place first. And then have a traffic study right up front with a table that's right on the preliminary plan. And for each proposed lot, there was a proposed land use, and that related to the traffic study. So when a project like this comes in, it's actually quite a bit smaller of a building and a lower traffic generator on proposed lot C5. From a planning standpoint, it's almost a plug-and-play project. So that's why the staff report is pretty brief. So let me walk you through this. This is the southeastern corner of M45 and M11. So the intersection of 2 regionally important roads. The property is currently outlined in blue.
Any comments or questions for Frank at this point? Okay, City Engineer Scott Connors, if you could offer your perspective.
Sure, three very straightforward items. First of all, on the cover sheet, we want to make sure that the designer's name and professional engineer seal is listed on there. There's a little bit of a mixed match of plan sheets in here, so it's got to be very clear who's the design engineer and engineer of record. Second issue is a little bit more significant, but an easy fix. On sheet that's labeled 1 of 1, it's not really the first sheet, but it's labeled as 1 of 1. It is a title survey that was prepared by Moore and Brujink, who did the underlying Westtown PASP. They made a mistake on one of those easements and called out a private stormwater easement as a public stormwater easement. We've reached out to them, looked at the language. They've tried to convince us the language is pretty soft. Don't worry about it. Just as late as about 4 o'clock today, I heard back from our attorney's office, and they said, no can do, that needs to be changed. So we're going to want to make sure that that's a condition. I don't know if Frank had listed the city engineer's recommendations as part of his condition, but we definitely want to get that done because it's a big deal to get that fixed. And then our third item might seem a little bit picky, but if you think back to when this development was originally proposed, all of their stormwater goes into an existing regulated wetland in the middle of their development. And it was something that we don't see very often. And they did get that approved, but there was a big condition that said all of these neighboring property owners need to have stormwater pre-treatment before their stormwater goes into that wetland. They don't want all the brake shavings and the grits and the grimes and all that kind of stuff that gets collected in catch basins every day. That has to be collected with first flush treatment. And a lot of times when a developer gets past this stage, they never see the engineer again. So we want to make sure that the engineer is protected, we're protected. There's notes right on the plan that talk about the maintenance that's required for that, because that's really the only document we have left when we deal with those owners later to say, hey, did you go clean out your stormwater maintenance device? It says right here you need to do that every 6 months or something like that. So it's important that get put in there as well. That's it.
Thanks, Scott. Any other questions for Scott on this? Okay, we'll turn to the applicant. If you could come forward, please, identify yourself and
My name's Nick Lukes with Bosch Architecture. What we're proposing, Frank kind of laid it out, 2,100 square foot wood frame building, brick block, or brick, cast stone, glass, architectural ACM panel. Pretty straightforward. The renderings pretty much show what we're looking for. I can address some of the comments from both Frank and Scott. They have been added to the plans in our plan set, and I believe we had sent those to Frank today, but they didn't make it in the packet. The 60% visible light transmission, we have no problem meeting that. What were the other? The signage, the note has been added to the 5-foot setback for a ground sign. It's listed, they like to do ground signs anyways. It was a mistake on the original plan. It's listed as a pylon sign. And then the area of the wall signs, I believe, has been added as well. As far as Scott's comments, the storms, we have a storm scepter proposed on the site that will filter out any of the excess stuff that wouldn't be going into the wetlands. We've added a note on the plans to have that inspected annually per the ADS recommendations. As far as the public storm easement, I know Consumers really wants to get this project approved, so they'll be working with, and we will be working with Moore and Brugink to get that language changed, however that needs to be done, you know. And then the other comment was the title sheet. For some reason, our title block didn't get printed on the sheet. It's normally on there, so that just didn't come through in what was submitted to you guys, and that will be on the final submittal. So any questions from us, I guess is...
okay, any questions for the developer at this point?
The building looked quite tall, just sitting here. How tall is it?
It's 20 feet tall to the tallest point. So typically it's a one-story building, but it's got, there's some open parts in it, and then there's some drop ceilings inside. So it's, there's like a 4-foot parapet that screens the rooftop units on there, and so you got a 16-foot bearing. There's about 24 to 30 inches of truss inside. So the ceiling inside is like 10 to 12 feet in varying areas. So, and then some of the offices are a little lower.
Thank you.
Okay, at this point, we're going to open the public hearing. If I can hear a motion to do so, please.
Motion to open a public hearing?
Support.
Motion by Scott, supported by Pat, to open the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Again, anyone from the audience that would wish to come forward and offer any comments concerning this project?
Motion to close public hearing?
Motion by Steve,
Support.
supported by Pat, to close the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, as Frank pointed out, it looks pretty straightforward, looks to be consistent with the plan as far as the private road that runs parallel to Wilson Avenue, and this would interconnect with it.
Is that road going to be done when they start this, or are they going to? Sorry,
That road is currently in place. I believe it may be only base coat at this point, but the road is there.
okay.
So,
I think he's right, it's just hard to see.
yeah. I have pictures
Yeah, I
of it
mean,
if you want to
I've
see
not
it.
driven
so.
up into it, but
I
yeah,
asked the same question during site plan review, and they corrected me, so
okay. Sewers are all in, everything's all in?
that's our understanding. Now, I don't know if all that stuff's been approved. There's a process that you go through with all that, and they're working on that. But they won't be able to get started with the building until they have sewer and water and access.
When do you plan to start?
The construction?
Yes.
I believe June is what we're
June.
hoping to start, maybe give or take a month or two, so.
Gotcha.
Okay, what's your pleasure?
Do you want to do it, Pat?
Need condition 3, adding
City engineer's comments? Yep. Okay.
I apologize, that was my typo. On your model motion, you can just change item 2 to Walker Engineers staff report dated 2/12/20,
12, got it.
and then you pick it up.
Okay, I'll make a motion for case 20-854 to approve the final area site plan for Consumers Credit Union on lot C5 of the Westtown Commercial Plan Unit Development, subject to the following. All conditions noted in the Walker Community Development Director's staff report dated 2/11/2020. All conditions noted in the City of Walker Engineers staff report dated 2/12/2020. Findings of fact per Walker PUD FASP Code Section 94-213 stated in the affirmative. The PUD as described by the final area site plan continues to meet the standards contained in subsection 3G of this section and meets other applicable standards for review. The final area site plan is in substantial compliance with the previously approved preliminary area site plan, consisting of the maps and accompanying written materials required under subsection 2 of this section. The applicant has made provision satisfactory to the Planning Commission to ensure that those open space areas and common use areas shown on the plan for use by the public or by residents of the development have been irrevocably committed for that purpose. Various recorded easements and covenants have been provided for the open space areas and common use areas within the Westtown CPUD. Provision satisfactory to the Planning Commission has also been made to provide for the financing of any improvements shown on the plan for open space areas and common use areas which are included within the development, and that maintenance of such improvements has been ensured by a means satisfactory to the Planning Commission. The PUD complies with the uses permitted by the PUD district and any prohibitions of specific uses by the Planning Commission pursuant to section 94-2133J.
We have a motion, is there support?
Support.
Support by Scott. Any other comments, questions? There being none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. With that, Any other reports by the staff committees?
Well, why don't we welcome our new planning director, Tricia Anderson, and have her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Tricia Anderson. I'm the new planning director.
And where did you come from?
I was at Cannon Township for 2 years, and I was at Plainfield Township for about 7 years before that.
That was a loaded question. Because I knew where you were
Oh, you did? Okay.
from my day job.
Yes. Yeah, I'm excited to be here and looking forward to attending more planning commission meetings.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
I sent you folks an email earlier in the week, or I think it was last week, February 13th. Your schedule to approve the 2020 master plan. So April 15th is when you folks will review the distribution draft of the entire report. So we've been working to redline that document up so that it's ready for your distribution draft review, which really is almost final. On April 27th, the City Commission will review the distribution draft, because the City Commission by law would then release the distribution draft for the 63-day waiting period. That would end on June 29th. July 1st, Planning Commission would hold the public hearing on the final report, and then July 13th, potentially, the City Commission would review and potentially approve the final 2020 master plan. So it's been a long haul, but we're getting close to having a final document. It is 500 pages, but you know what? It's got to last for 20 years, and it's very neighborhood specific. And the reason we did it that way is because Walker consists of so many different neighborhoods. If you look at how the city lays out, and that's something that Tricia and I are working on. Bringing that understanding of, Walker is not a homogeneous place. There's many neighborhoods in town here, and the plan should be responsive to that. So I'm hopeful that by July 13th, you should have an updated 2020 master plan. And that's all I have.
Now, Frank, you indicate that April 15, we'd have that review. Will we have an opportunity to take a look at that before the 15th?
Absolutely. I am not a believer on dropping things on people at a meeting and saying, please approve this, particularly when it's 500 pages. I don't expect you all to read every page. That's really staff's job to do that. If you have that much time on your hand, good for you. Time on your hands, good for you. But you will get it. I'll make sure that you have at least a week to review. Okay. Hopefully 2 weeks, but we work the schedule out with our consultant. So yes, we will not drop that plan on you folks. You'll get it ahead of time.
Okay, very good.
Motion to adjourn?
Got a motion to adjourn? Support? Support. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. 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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
All right.